those rich people always flying off somewhere.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Vegan Vanguard. It's Mexi.
And Marine.
And we hated our previous intro. We've hated it since the start.
Since day one.
Since
There's
day one.
not one day when I have enjoyed saying that intro.
And I don't think that, honestly, if we're being honest, that there's been a single day that the listeners enjoyed listening to that intro. So
it's just so bad. What were we thinking?
I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, bear with us as we come up with a new intro.
Mm-hmm.
But
maybe listeners have some advice.
Yeah, you can pitch in some thoughts.
Suggestions, yeah.
So yeah.
Man, happy we will never be saying that again.
No, never. Fear not. So yeah, today we're going to talk a bit about our experiences as creators on YouTube and as a podcast creators and just, I guess, generally in online activist spaces.
Totally. And as also people who have somewhat of an online presence in activist leftist spaces, but who are considered like total freaks in their daily life. You know, you're like, I swear to God, there are some people who think like me. And
yeah,
I feel like when I'm online or when I'm interacting in those spaces, I feel that a lot of people are. But then when I go out into the real world, I almost feel embarrassed about my channel or very insecure about just...
Yeah, but no, exactly. So yeah, I feel like this will be relevant for if you are a creator of some kind, or even just for people who are part of the online leftist community, the online vegan community, who are trying to, put information out there and be vulnerable and face pushback and trying to create change. And I think these are challenges that a lot of us face. And I think it'd be good to talk about them and then how we personally try to overcome them and try to build a warmer sense of community and purpose for what we're doing.
Yeah, and how on some days it's easier than others. I know that today we had another episode planned up until about midday, and then we were just talking back and forth on WhatsApp and just had so many feelings that we wanted to discuss. And so we decided to, at the last minute, switch this episode topic. So it's definitely going to be unplanned and unscripted.
But yeah, and we both had like a pretty difficult week, so we just kind of felt this would be a great way to pick ourselves up and hopefully pick up some of the listeners who are also feeling this way. Because I do get a lot of messages from people who are similarly frustrated and facing similar challenges in these online activist spaces.
Yeah, and at least my difficulty in wanting to put out content that is more vulnerable and that does address these topics more and that shows that I am a multi-dimensional, complex person who also can be really funny and silly and not serious and unscripted, but then also feeling like maybe the best way to present this information is to kind of give people the cold hard facts. And also I certainly get less criticism when I'm doing that, or the criticism is less personal. So it's a bit easier to handle because then you attract people who just disagree with your political views. And I think that that's just easier to take than someone who's criticizing, your speech habits, which we'll talk about later, or, something about like your personal life.
Yeah.
But I'm constantly having existential doubt about like where to draw that line.
Yeah.
And going back and forth on it. And I know that it's something that you experienced too, Mexi, and notably recently with your Q&A video.
Yes. Yeah. When I filmed that video, I did not want to post it. I hated it for many, many days, and I wanted to refilm it. And finally, I was just like, you know what? It took me 2 hours or, a long time to film this, so I'm not going to refilm it. I'm just going to put it up. But I was super self-conscious about it. And yeah, it's a hard line. I mean, I do want to get on there and bring myself to the channel and just feel like I'm totally being myself and being a goof and laughing and joking and like swearing because that's what I do in real life. And I
Mm-hmm.
just kind of want it to be like off the cuff as if I'm just talking to my friends. But yeah, that does open you up to a lot more criticism. And yeah, I'm not sure if it actually takes away from what you're saying, or some people tend to think that it does take away
Mm-hmm.
from what you're saying. There's a lot of videos on my channel that I feel like going back and just making private and just keeping up my video essays where it's relatively well scripted and everything looks good. Although all of my earlier videos, even if they were video essays, a lot of them I never scripted and I was talking off the cuff. So
Right, you just edit it more.
no, I didn't. Like I just some of those are kind of painful to watch for me actually
Mm.
because um but hey, I mean that's where I started, but yeah, so I mean one I guess we can talk about the speech stuff now because that was like one of the main reasons why I was so self-conscious about it because when I script myself, obviously I don't say the words like and and I don't use uptalk and everything, but this is just how I speak in my regular daily life. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's just very vulnerable and yeah, it just makes you feel very self-conscious to think that people are going to focus on that. And I know it's not just me that they focus on. Like I was watching ContraPoints interviewed Chelsea Manning, and I guess she said a lot, like so many comments were saying
Ugh.
or just like really commenting on that, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, fuck guys, like that's like hurtful for somebody who's trying to just express themselves, and it's hard to be on camera off the cuff. It's hard to just come up with things and speak in a way that you sound like a brilliant well
Totally.
put together. Yeah, so anyway, I was very self-conscious about that, and then I did get comments. I always get comments if I'm off the cuff that I say like too much, or I speak in uptalk, and why it's so ridiculous, it's so terrible. And it's really difficult to deal with those kind of things because it's frustrating. It's
Mm-hmm.
like I can't police the way that I'm talking all the time, or I won't come off as genuine,
Mm-hmm.
or I just things just won't come out right. It'll be really difficult for me to say it. But when I am just being myself, I feel super, super vulnerable to everyone saying, "Oh, you're saying like too much. It's lame. What you're
Mm-hmm.
saying, you sound unintelligent."
Yeah, I mean, how many times have we listened back to the editing of this podcast and
Oh yeah.
have lamented over how many times we say like?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the funny thing is that I never notice you saying it when I'm editing the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I am so focused on the way that I'm speaking,
Mm-hmm.
that I
Mm-hmm.
notice it a lot more and I think, okay, how can people even listen to the message that I'm delivering because all that I can hear is the like.
Mm-hmm.
But that also is such a projection on my behalf and is also just the way that I speak. And
Mm-hmm.
when I really focus on the media that I consume that's off the cuff, the people are saying like a lot as well, but I don't ever notice it unless I start focusing on it. And
Mm-hmm.
then now it's become this weird thing where I think, okay, well, they're saying it a lot, so it must not be that noticeable when I say it. Or conversely, when people don't say it that much, I think, how can they not be saying it?
Mm-hmm.
How can they never be saying like because I say like so much and I sound like such an idiot? And
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I was watching ContraPoints live with Brianna Gray, and she just blew me away. She
Mm-hmm.
was saying the most insightful and articulate thing. She was not saying like, she was not saying I mean she was, but not that much. And I was just floored. I was just like, how are you talking like that?
Yeah.
like I could never talk like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I get kind of upset. I mean, I commented this to someone who commented on that Q&A video and pointed out that I was saying like too much. That I feel like it's also kind of a gendered thing. I mean, I'm some men use uptalk and they say like a lot as well, but I feel like people don't really criticize men who say like. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
because their voices are lower, so even when they do use uptalk, it's not as noticeable. But I feel like I don't see a lot of like male male YouTube creators getting comments saying, why are you saying like so much? Or why are you saying, you know what I mean?
That's interesting. That's interesting because as you're saying that, I'm realizing I don't think I've ever. You're like, yeah, they say like and they use uptalk, and I'm thinking I don't even know if that's true because I don't even listen to how they talk very much, or
Mm-hmm.
I've never stopped to listen exactly to the words that they're using and to compare it to my own speech patterns. So you might be right that they use uptalk and that they use like. I literally don't
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm. Well, in a lot of videos, people are scripted and they're not saying like or you know, but if you catch somebody just saying something off the cuff, then oftentimes they do use
Right.
like or they use uptalk sometimes and whatever, but I don't feel like it's as noticeable when men do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are some people that I can think of who do say like a lot and who do use uptalk as men, but it sounds more authoritative in their male voice. So anyway, just this is all to say that I feel like it's kind of a gendered thing where women are socialized to speak in this way more
Mm-hmm.
often, even though men also are to some extent as well. But then it's just one of those things where we devalue whatever a woman is doing and value whatever a man is doing, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
it's like if men are
It's
socialized
like a
not
snowballing effect.
right. So if men are socialized not to speak this way, then that's automatically considered the authoritative, intelligent, well-composed way to be speaking. And if women are talking in this other way that they've been socialized to speak in, then that is considered unintelligent and flaky and flimsy and, not sure of yourself and whatnot.
Yeah, you're right. I think it is a self-fulfilling prophecy in the sense that perhaps this is a less clear way to talk, but also since women tend to talk that way more than men, it also reifies the fact that this is like a devalued way of speaking and so on and
Mm-hmm.
so forth. I read this article that was interesting about uptalk and about vocal fry, that's what they called it. I think it also stems from the fact that women, whenever they offer some sort of information, do so in a way that's more uncertain.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I know that's what uptalk is, right? You raise the
Mm-hmm.
intonation of your voice to make it seem almost like a question mark at the end, so as to make whatever you're saying sound way more tentative.
Mm-hmm.
But so it's obviously not just a way of speaking. It's also that women tend to use qualifiers, say like, do you agree? Or you know what I mean? Or isn't that true? And that also reminds me of things that I've read, for example, about gendered behaviors of students in college classrooms, how they'll raise their hand and say, I'm not really sure what this means, or like, oh, correct me if this is completely off topic, or oh, you can totally disregard what I'm saying, but I kind of have the feeling that da da da
Mm-hmm.
da da.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whereas men, are more likely to present information in a authoritative or at least matter of factual way,
Mm-hmm.
even when they are less sure.
Mm-hmm.
So it's true that, I mean, to speak to what you're saying, and I've never really thought about it that way, but our way of speaking, this quote unquote Valley Girl way of speaking is also a product of all of that social conditioning. So
Mm-hmm.
the fact it's almost like broken window policing to point the finger at like uptalk or at these really specific ways that women speak without kind of attacking the larger societal issue of how we deal with information in like a gendered way, or how we
Mm-hmm.
devalue certain information when it's coming from different people.
Yeah, I mean, like everything you're saying about, women tend to do this more because they tend to present things in ways that are more, they tend to present things in ways that might be more accommodating to someone else disagreeing with them, or they might be presenting things in a way that might be, less harsh or less offensive to somebody else so that you can have more of a dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's problematic aspects to it for sure in terms of the way that women are socialized to do that. But then I also think that we don't pay enough attention to the problematic ways that men are socialized to present their
Mm-hmm.
information, because simply stating your information as if it's an authoritative fact and being argumentative and being like, yes, I know the answer, with no humility and no, openness or no thoughts about what the other person might be thinking or feeling when you just slam that information down. You know what I mean? I don't think that that's a very good quality. I think that actually presenting information in a way that is humble and open and creates a, you know, a safe space for dialogue, I think that's actually a positive thing. Even though, you know, there are insidious reasons why we're socialized to be more accommodating. But I just feel like another example is like in academia, there's this whole thing, or this whole trend, I guess, that often journalists will contact academics to give expertise or whatever. They'll say, we're writing a piece on X, Y, and Z, and you're an expert in this, so can you answer some questions? And, you know, 9 times out of 10, a woman will be like, oh, that's not quite my area of expertise, or I don't feel quite comfortable speaking on that topic. And then they'll be like, okay, well, can you suggest someone who will? And if they suggest a man to do it, like the man more often than not will, even if it's not their direct area, they'll say, yes, sure, yes, I can speak on that. Right. And so there's all these workshops that they hold to try and get women to be more assertive and to be more, you know, grab the bull by the horns and be like, yes, I am the expert, I will talk on that. But I'm like, should we be trying to socialize women, like,
or should we be trying to socialize men to perhaps not accept to speak about things they're not experts on?
Yeah, like should our focus be on trying to make the womanly virtue match the man's, because we assume that the being assertive, I mean, the thing is that in this capitalist system, being a patriarch is beneficial. So of course, if within this value system, it is beneficial for somebody to just say that they are the expert and take all the opportunities and yourself, take all the speaking, like take up all the air in the room. But if we're trying to build an alternative kind of, you know, society where, yeah, people have integrity and people are actually open and caring and whatever, you know, I feel like our focus shouldn't always be on socializing the women to try and take on more masculine traits, or putting down the way that they've been socialized as necessarily something that should be devalued, or just, you know, disregarded. I mean, I know that it's an issue that, you know, women are taught to maybe question themselves more or be more tentative, but I'm like, but I think men should be taught to be more tentative. I think men should be taught to not necessarily slam down their opinion and be super rigid in their thinking and, you know, get very upset if people are challenging them, and, you know, to be kind and polite in dialogue, even if it's oppositional. Anyway, that was a whole rant.
No, that's a great point. I really agree. What you were saying earlier about how we live in this patriarchal system that's like hyper capitalist and hyper competitive, I think it is true that it drives us to want to jump on opportunities and embrace, I mean, because turning down an opportunity to speak or to gain some followers or to put your voice out there isn't technically good self-branding, right? And we're taught that we should always be seeking out more opportunities and seeking ways to get ahead. So automatically deferring to another person would be bad capitalist practice, right? Because it wouldn't be adding up the tallies of your resume or whatever. And there's a sense that if you're turning down some kind of opportunity, or if you're deciding to decline an opportunity to speak because you feel like, you know, your voice is not the most important voice in the conversation, you're almost shamed for not being competitive enough or not being the best, you know, or yeah. And I also feel like not only is, you know, the way that women do things sometimes devalued, I also get the sense, and I have no proof to back this up because I've never been a man on YouTube, but that I'll get comments so often telling me, you know, that I'm not backing my statements up, or that I'm speaking too factually, or that I'm not leaving enough room for discussion. And I'm like, I don't know. I feel like I say things in a pretty like kind and open way. And I was just speaking to a friend about this actually. I was telling her about so I recently released videos on the gender binary and animals, and I almost wanted to qualify my statements more to invite feedback and say, this is my
Hmm.
impression. What do you think? I don't,
I noticed you doing
this
that in the
is,
last one.
yeah, well, I actually genuinely did want people's feedback on that particular issue of gendering dairy cows. You will have probably no idea what I'm speaking about if you haven't seen my
Go
YouTube
watch the
videos.
videos, guys.
Yeah. Um, More on that series later because I have a few thoughts that I like want your feedback on, Mexi. But
Hmm.
whenever sometimes I want to present information kind of factually or sort of be categorical about the things that I'm saying because I really do believe them. But then I always have this like little person on my shoulder saying, no, always remind people that you're open to discussion. Always remind people that you're not exactly sure what you're saying. And then sometimes when I do that and I edit the video back, I'm like, ugh, I sound really annoying. I should have just said the statement. But then sometimes I
Hmm.
say the statements and then I get embarrassed thinking back to my old videos like, oh, well, I was being way too assertive with that argument.
Oh my
I
gosh.
yeah, I think that that's one thing that's really hard also of being on YouTube, and tell me if you relate to this, but putting out a video and feeling really good about it and then thinking back to it. I never rewatch my old videos, but so many times I think back to the old videos I made and I like cringe, or there's something,
Hmm.
or like I'm like not proud of them anymore, or I think, oh,
Hmm.
well, like if people watch this, they're probably going to think I'm being way too authoritative with this information and think I'm right. And it just makes me sad because that's like never my intention,
Oh my gosh, I'm like
you
so
know?
mad that people are making you feel that way because I do not get that from you at all. Like, I do not watch your videos and think, oh, she's leaving no room for discussion. I mean, you're
Mm,
presenting all of these amazing theories and everything. You're explaining it so well. I mean, I don't think you're ever coming across as, here's my opinion, and that's the end of the
mhm,
conversation. But yeah, no, I relate in the sense that definitely a lot of my old videos, I mean, I think we could talk about this as well, but that most of my most watched videos are awful. Like, they're my
mhm,
worst videos and they have
mhm,
so many views and I still get so many people watching them and commenting on them, and I'm like, "Oh, cringe. Like, please don't watch this video. Watch my
mhm,
latest videos, please, you know?"
mhm,
But the reason that I cringe is not that I feel like I sound too authoritative. It's that those videos I never really scripted. And so I'm swearing and I'm
mhm.
saying like, and I'm laughing and I'm doing all these things that I feel like that leaves me open to a lot of criticism from a lot of people as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because I've privated, so a lot of the videos that I've made in the past, I've unlisted. Not and I also feel like it's a good barometer of how confident I'm feeling at a given moment because sometimes I don't unlist any of my videos and I feel fine about my entire channel. And then sometimes I get almost these pangs of like, I don't want to say insecurity because that's not really what it is, but almost feeling like, oh, there's like too much of myself out there and it feels too vulnerable. And so I'll unlist some videos. But I've never unlisted videos that are like scripted or that are fact based. And I
Hmm.
think that that's what people don't realize too sometimes is that even like I'm torn because the videos that take a lot of research and are scripted obviously take so much time and so much effort, but
Hmm.
I feel like emotionally that's a lighter load to put out there than the few videos I've made that are unscripted. And so sometimes when I watch YouTubers that are so completely themselves, even though admittedly they probably have spent a fraction of the time they have working on that video,
Hmm.
sometimes I think, wow, I don't think I'd even be capable of putting that out there. Like, I do have a level of admiration for people who are super raw and unscripted and apologetic in their videos, but then I also am aware of the fact that that's not really what I want to do with my channel, and that every time I choose to go down the route of being less academic, I end up regretting the decision to put it out there.
Hmm. Absolutely. I kind of like use my academia.
Yeah, as
I
like a
use
shield.
academia as a shield to,
Totally.
yeah, that's definitely my like shame shield where I'm like, it's okay, I'll just present the facts and that's it.
Yeah, and people can disagree with the fact and they can leave me alone,
Hmm.
can
Exactly.
disagree with the facts. Sorry,
Yeah.
that should have been plural. Um, yeah, and I think that that would be different if no one who I knew in my real life watched my channel.
Mm-hmm.
If it was completely only anonymous people, I don't think I would care.
Mm-hmm.
Or I know that I wouldn't care because I've had daydreams of like, oh, I want to start a new channel and have it be top secret and not followed by anyone who I know. But then how would I even start to get traffic to that channel? Because
Yeah.
if I posted on my other channel, hey guys, I made a new
Yeah, yeah,
private
exactly.
life like channel, people would
Yeah.
go and follow that also from my real life.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a line that's really hard to walk when I meet people. And usually I don't talk about the fact that I have a YouTube channel. So I just, talk about my day job, like tutoring students and teaching classes in school. And I sound sort of boring, to be honest. Like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times it is also a shield that I use. Like I'll be really matter of factual about like just having this job and not really doing anything else. Or, they'll ask me
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, what do you do? And so I'll describe this. And obviously like YouTube and the podcast is like a huge part of my life. And also speaking, the times where I've been able to speak at conferences. But then knowing that the second that I tell people about it, it's really going to open the floodgates I mean, they can literally type in 3 words on YouTube and have access to hundreds of hours of me speaking to a camera.
Uh-huh.
And that is so difficult for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that water easier to tread when I have nothing personal up there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, 100%. Like I just started seeing someone
Yeah.
online
Hopefully he does
and
not listen to this podcast. See,
yeah, I
that's
know, right?
another
I'm just
thing.
like, yeah, I hope
I
they are
know.
not listening.
So often Mexi and I are like, oh, we wish we could talk about like our dating and our sex life and all these things we want to rant about. And then we're like, but we
What if
can't.
people hear it? I know that's the whole problem. Actually, I have a
It
really
really
funny
is.
story
Maybe we should
from my Easter
start a top
dinner.
secret podcast, babe,
Yeah.
that we don't post anywhere.
Yeah, no, I have a very funny story from my Easter dinner, but I'll just finish this
Oh yeah.
quickly. So anyway, I always mention that I have a YouTube channel, but I don't liberally give it out to people
Okay,
because
but what if people ask you what it is? What do you say?
for sure. Well, I mean, I don't know, like on these online dating sites, a lot of them I just like don't really follow up with. I'm like, okay, just forget you. Some of them I have given it to. Some people actually had their own channels that were along the same lines, like they were also speaking about politics and stuff. So for people like that, I was like, oh, cool, fine, like you'll like it then.
But
Um,
like, what about in your personal life? Like people you know, who you meet.
well, like a lot of them are just not interested. I mean, a lot of my close friends just don't really like they all know that I have a YouTube channel and they all know that I
Hmm.
have a podcast, but they just aren't super interested in listening to it or watching it.
Hmm.
I feel like a lot of people that I know like don't actually really even sit around watching YouTube videos at all, or listening to podcasts.
I also feel like since you're working on it, I mean, since you just completed a dissertation, a PhD, that very much like it still says something about your beliefs and what you're interested in and
Mhm.
your, driver in academia. I feel like when I was, on this research grant in Argentina studying like political science and transgender rights, or when I was in school, I felt less of a like people still kind of got what my interests were
Mhm.
from what I was doing in my daily life, whereas now my job is super apolitical.
Mhm.
And so I really don't feel like I present a version of I really don't feel like I present any of my political beliefs or any of who I am when I talk about like what I do for, quote unquote for a living.
Mhm.
And so, but the podcast has helped a little bit with that because I feel more comfortable telling people, oh, and I have a podcast because, okay, what are the odds that they're going to sit through like hours of me and Mexi talking? Or if they will, like, fine, but it's not like my face on a camera
Right.
available on their phone while they're talking to me when they've just met me 10 minutes ago.
Right. Yeah, that's always awkward. And I'm always just like, what if they think my editing skills are balls? Like, what if they're just like, wow, this is bad, you know?
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess you're right that my current profession, I mean, and like people who know me, people who have known me since high school and everything, and see what I'm posting on Facebook, although I hardly post on my personal Facebook anymore. I post on my Mexi page, but I mean, they all know that I'm like pretty radical. So
Hmm.
I'm sure they know exactly what my channel's about. And if they don't care to watch it, then they just don't care to watch it, whatever. But the funny thing that happened over Easter was that I was shocked to find out that basically like my entire family watches my YouTube videos. And God bless them, they're all so awesome, but I didn't want to like share it with anybody because they're all just like liberal people, you know what I mean? They're
Hmm.
they're woke to an extent, but not really. And
Hmm.
certainly in my Nana, I feel I really did not want my Nana to find the channel because I felt like she would have a lot of strong opinions about it. Anyway, we're sitting at Easter dinner, and she's like, "Yeah, so I've watched some of your videos. I found them online, and we need to talk." And I was like, "Oh God!" And so she's sitting across the room at Easter dinner, and she's shouting over to me like, "So, are you against capitalism?" And I was like, and then my aunt,
Sorta.
yeah, my aunt sitting next to her, and she's just like, "Oh yeah, she is for sure." And I was like, "What?" I'm like, "How do you know?" I'm like, "What?" And my cousin's sitting next to me, and he's like, "Oh, I've been waiting for this day." And I was like, "Do you watch my channel too?" Apparently, everyone watches my channel, and I'm like,
Hmm.
"Wow." And so I was super embarrassed. And they were like, "Why didn't you tell us about it?" And I was like, "Because I don't want anyone to watch it." And they were
Hmm.
like, but they were
Please
actually,
don't.
yeah, I know. A lot of them are really supportive and being like, "Oh, actually, they were really educational videos, and I liked them," or whatever. But my nana was very freaked out. She was very freaked out.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it is weird to want, because we have these spaces where, yeah, I would love to come on here and talk about, yeah, our sex lives or like whatever, but it's like, no, we can't because people might hear it that we know,
Hmm.
it's very, very weird. Just walking that
Hmm.
line of wanting to be like just genuine and authentic and say whatever the hell we want, but then realizing that our loved ones are maybe watching and listening.
Right.
Or
And then
people that
also
we've just
struggling
started
with,
dating are maybe watching and listening, and then we're like, oh, oops, guess I made a whole
absolutely.
podcast about you.
And tying back to what we were saying earlier of like wanting to be totally authentic, but then feeling almost, feeling more embarrassed if we're saying like more, or if we're saying
Yeah.
comments that aren't always 100% on point or aren't always 100% like using the correct terminology or,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel a lot more comfortable on this podcast than on my channel for
Mm-hmm.
sure, because
Yeah.
I know for a fact my parents don't listen to this. And I don't think, my friends might listen to this, but if they're my best friends, like I don't give a fuck if they hear all this stuff because I've
Mm-hmm.
spoken to them about it. So like that's great. Like I say things on this podcast that I would never say otherwise about like my family or, even the story that you just shared. Not that I would ever like shit talk them or anything. Like I love them and that's not what I want to come on here for, but I really overthink every little thing that I do say on my channel because I know that that can be interpreted a certain way by my family members.
Mm-hmm.
And a really, really clear example of that was with my coming out as bisexual video.
Mm-hmm.
That video was so hard for me to put out there and then deal with the consequences of what it did when I put it out there.
Mm-hmm.
I had been wanting to I want to talk about bisexuality so much more than I do. And maybe maybe we can have a segment where I do so on this channel until
Yeah.
that need has passed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I didn't, on my channel. So I kind of came out to myself and to my friends as bisexual like a year and a half before I put that video up. And I at first being realizing I was bisexual was just this very personal thing, and then it became imbued with all these political realizations of like, oh my God, it's because we think also sexuality is so binary, and I always felt like I had to choose. And the personal is political, obviously, like the personal is political when it comes to my bisexuality.
Mm-hmm.
And so I finally like made that video that was 100% the most vulnerable video that I've made to date. about not just bisexuality, but also my experience realizing that I was bisexual growing, or like having these conflicted feelings about feeling like I might be a lesbian and being very scared about that when I was younger, and having a homophobic family and da 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 da.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like I mean, there's definitely some. So now that video is unlisted, by the way, Mexi, I don't know if you knew that,
Yeah,
but
no.
I unlisted it a long time ago because I realized like it's not worth the stress. Like
Mm-hmm.
I have way too much stress of knowing that it's up there because people in my family can see it, but also the people that I'm meeting, the second they find out that I have a channel, like that's a video that I might not want them to see. That goes back to what we were saying earlier of like, well, there is a certain security that you have if your channel only talks about purely political things that aren't personal, because I don't really give a shit if like, you know, someone who I meet at a party goes and watches it. But as
Mm-hmm.
soon as you have personal information, it's just different. Not to say that I'm like ashamed about who I am, but like you don't necessarily want to open that door to like
Mm-hmm.
anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Um and anyway, putting that video up, like I just a few, see, I'm still dealing with the privacy issues, but yeah, I mean, just one of my family members was like incredibly mad at me for putting it up, and it led to like months of just me being so upset about it, and also feeling like I wanted to keep it up there because fuck you, it's my channel and it's
Mm-hmm.
also my journey with this sexuality, and I finally feel okay to talk about it, and you're making me feel really embarrassed that I or like I was seeking attention by putting it up there when that's really not what it was. And I tried to explain to them that, look, watching videos on YouTube of people's coming out stories was literally what saved me in a sense at one point and
Mm-hmm.
helped me figure out who I was. And I, you know, for that reason also would love to talk about my experience and help other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I got so many great, like hundreds and hundreds of very insightful comments on that video of also people relating to it. And but anyway, I still decided to take it down a few months ago because I was thinking, you know, it's not worth the stress.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not worth the stress of meeting someone and not knowing if they've seen that video. And the other thing is that people from my high school know that I have a channel, and like they don't watch my stuff, but I have a feeling a lot of people, quite a few people I know for a fact, saw that video.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to a super privileged high school, normie ass high school, where basically 99% of the people who I went to high school with are now in finance or in corporate law, literally.
Mm.
And you know, I look at their lives and I don't want it, and I think, wow, I'm so happy that I changed a lot since high school, and I'm so happy that I expanded my mind, and I'm so passionate about these things now. But also there's still a little part of me that sometimes feels like what they're doing is so safe and so beyond criticism just because it's part of the dominant culture.
Mm-hmm.
Not
Definitely.
beyond criticism in the sense that like I don't look at it critically, but beyond criticism in the sense that, well, since they have the backing of literally everyone thinking that what they're doing is great and is the norm and is what an ambitious person in a neoliberal capitalist society should be doing,
Mm-hmm.
I do feel embarrassed sometimes, or I do feel vulnerable sometimes, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Definitely.
Yeah. And every time I put up a video that might be a little more vulnerable, or that might be saying like a little bit more, that might be talking about feminism or these connections that people think are sort of cuckoo between like
Yeah.
I've never said cuckoo in my life. I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
I love like what realizing that certain terms are ableist has
I
done to
know.
my language.
Me too.
Because I really use very improbable terms.
Yeah, me
Like
too.
every day there's a new one.
Yeah.
Anyway, so people think I'm a little bit cuckoo sometimes in these circles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when I put these like theories out there, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of people that I've known for a long time, like, since high school, since grade school, that, they'll ask me questions about stuff, and I have to really tiptoe around my answer and really make sure to choose my words very carefully and not make it sound too radical,
Yeah.
you know? Even though I'm like, why am I doing this? I have all the facts. I could just explain it point blank, but I just feel like I definitely am like walking on eggshells with a lot of people.
Mm.
Um, and I'm sure, I mean, I mean, this is another thing. Like, you know, a lot of my friends, some of them do follow my Mexi page. A lot of them don't. Like, they just aren't really paying attention. And then the ones that do follow my page, like, I mean, they rarely like anything that I'm sharing, even though I'm like, I don't think I share objectionable shit too often, you know? And I'm like, they have Facebook, you know, business pages, and I'm always liking their business stuff. And I'm like, why aren't you liking my stuff? You know? I'm like, I'm aware that some, you know, I'm posting communist memes sometimes, you know, or like I am aware
Well,
that
yeah, and they're fucking
yeah,
awesome.
they're the best. And I'm aware that a lot of my followers like unironically have, you know, like vaporwave pictures of Lenin as their profile picture.
Right.
But the points that they're like, you know, the comments that they're leaving are extremely well thought out and reasonable.
Hmm.
But anyway, I just feel I do feel very self-conscious about that, and very yeah, just nervous that I'm alienating all of these people, that because I don't really need to reach the far left. They're already reached, right? I mean,
Mm.
I do have a lot of people messaging me that say that they started out as conservative and now like I've convinced them about a lot of different things, which is
Hmm.
amazing. But I feel like the people that we really need to reach most are these like normie liberal white people. I mean, these are people that, you know, I grew up with or that surround me. These are the people that I need to be reaching, and I feel very self-conscious that it's like, okay, I want you to follow my page, I want you to follow my stuff, but I also don't want you to be terrified and then become immediately alienated by
Hmm.
the kind of community that follows me, or like the sometimes the kind of stuff that I'm putting out. And it's just this very delicate balance of like, well, I want you to be exposed to this stuff, but I know that there are definitely some people who are like commenting on my posts that are certainly scaring people away from engaging with
Hmm.
my stuff. And I feel like that's one of the problems of the left, that they don't care that much about optics, and they're I mean I
Hmm.
understand trying to normalize certain things, but I also feel like you really, if you like, you have to know your audience, you know. um
Hmm.
but I feel like that's definitely a challenge for me with the people that I know and my friends from high school and everything, is like walking the line of like, I want you to be exposed to this stuff, but I feel like you're also gonna get horrified by like
Hmm. Yeah. It's interesting. I think that we, in that sense, we're a little bit different because the goal of maybe our channels, or not that our channels have a set goal,
hmm
but what I mean is that I think that your videos are super educational about how to try to understand the system, and do like they do have the potential to really radicalize someone who, you know, tries to think very rationally about this system of capitalism, because you debunk
hmm
in an accessible and very like matter factual way like these things about capitalism. And so I understand that, I understand why it would be super important for you to be able to reach the people who are like kind of just on the fence or kind of just liberal, you know, and you want to
hmm
like tilt that scale in the favor of like radical leftism.
hmm
And I think that I like I gave up on like I'm not really trying to make veganism accessible to more people, or I'm not really trying to make anti-capitalism accessible to more people. Sometimes I'm like, I don't really know what I'm trying to do. It's just like I'm excited about this information and these ideas, and so I'm just like putting them out there.
hmm
Um, and sometimes when people leave comments about like me preaching to the choir, I'm like, that's okay. Like I'm not really trying to like convert a whole bunch of people. Even though and if I did, you know, if I did think about the pool that I'm trying to radicalize, you know, it would be vegans who, you know, are thinking, who should be thinking more intersectionally. And I do definitely care about doing that. And I hope that my channel does that. And I think that it has done so for many people. But I wouldn't say that that is like the concern with which I write the videos. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
And so my new series, or the series that I've been experimenting with on my channel, that I've decided to call Systems of Speciesism, is sort of trying to branch and I'm realizing now, I'm like, I don't think these videos are actually more accessible to the people than the videos that I was making before. But I was thinking, so the point of the way the videos go is I take one oppression and I explain how it affects animals. Like I've done how ableism affects animals and how the gender binary affects animals. And I think next I want to do how fat shaming affects animals, or how ageism affects animals, or I don't know. I have so many ideas. And
Hmm.
I was thinking, well, okay, people who, are concerned with sizeism, or people who are concerned about ableism, also showing them that animals are victims of this system of oppression is a good way also to like show them how intersectional, like the fact that animals are their allies, and the fact that
Hmm.
if they really do want to dismantle this oppression in human communities, then they're going to have to take into consideration animals, because if they keep sanctioning the oppression of animals,
Hmm.
then they're implicitly continuing to oil the wheels of this other system, of ableism, of mass incarceration, of police brutality, of ageism, of the gender binary.
Hmm.
um
I thought you did a really good job of that with the gender binary videos, because you really made it clear that so much of our thinking about humans is based off of this really problematic and not even really scientifically sound understanding of gender in animals and what's natural in the animal world. And I feel like that's
mhm.
really important for us to think about because, yeah, if we want to stop people from thinking that this is just the natural way to be, like rape is just natural and men are just naturally
Mhm.
the providers and women are just, and people are just naturally competitive and like that's what it is, like dog eat dog
Mhm.
world. If you want to challenge these things, then we also have to challenge the foundational concepts that they're based on, right?
Mhm. Right. And thinking about, and Afko talks about this in her book Afroism, but thinking about animality, like thinking not just about animals and humans and how to free animals,
Mm-hmm.
but thinking about like the whole concept of animality as wrapped up in literally every single social justice issue, and how
Mm-hmm.
animality is a status under capitalism and under our current system of hierarchy.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, what a this would be a really cool way to show how much like animality is itself a social construct and does need to be challenged if we want to at all overcome these other oppressions. We can't tackle them independently from animality.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the videos that I've made so far in the series. I do think they're perhaps less accessible, or I don't know. I'm struggling with the fact that they're getting less views than my other videos, and I think that might be also from, I don't understand the YouTube algorithm. I'm really not consistent in my uploads. I think that might have something to do with it. I also think, okay, well, how many people are going to be really interested in a 28-minute video about how animals are oppressed by ableism? Okay, well, probably not as big of an audience as like if I'm talking about, racism in the Rochelle 4 community or something like that,
Yeah.
which still is super important to talk about, but
Mm-hmm.
is going to get more traction. And definitely, then if we want to go through that route, like, what about what I eat in a day
Oh
videos,
God.
or how to lose weight on a vegan diet, or, like obviously all these videos that we could easily make that would 100% get more traction.
Mm-hmm.
I'm proud of these videos and I like these videos, and I don't want the numbers to like dissuade me from making them. But then
Mm-hmm.
I'm also thinking, well, am I also, I do want them to reach people. So should I be like, sometimes I think it's wrong for me to be concerned about numbers. And when I listen to myself, I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm passionate about the information that I'm putting out there, and the numbers shouldn't matter. And that's how I think about things in my life. But then I think, well, should they though? Because don't I want this message to go out to more people?
Mm-hmm. I know.
So,
Yeah, I know. It's always a struggle. Like, and I feel like, especially in this, I guess, social media age, everything is just metrics. We just have metrics for
and they're so
everything.
fucking blatant. Like,
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
second you watch another video, you see how many likes and how many comments and how many views, and like,
Hmm.
even if you're not a number obsessed person, it's just we're navigating in a society where everything is measured. I mean,
Hmm.
if it can't be measured, it can't be managed, and so you bet your ass it's going to be measured so that it can
Hmm.
be
Hmm.
so that it
Yeah.
can be like managed in the most productive way, you
Right.
know?
But it just causes so much anxiety because yeah, whenever you put out a YouTube video, you're always like the whole rest of the day you're like refreshing to see like how many views people are
Yeah.
getting, how many likes, like what people are saying about it and everything like that. And so it's hard not to obsess about that. Sometimes I wonder because you can change it so that nobody sees, like you don't see if people like or dislike it, or you don't see how many people are subscribed to you, or you don't see any of those things. You can change it to do
Really?
that. Yeah, so some people do that so that it's just kind of like here's the video and it doesn't
And what about the
show.
views?
I don't
I don't
know.
think you can ever
I'm not
take
sure
that
about that
down.
one. Possibly though, because I was watching one today that said it had no views, but even though it obviously had like 30 likes and a bunch of comments,
Hmm.
so not sure.
Hmm. I
Um,
would be interested in that. I mean, that's
mhm,
something that I love about podcasts.
mhm.
Like, we, even though I think it must be frustrating if you're creating like podcasts on a professional level to not really know what other people. It's funny, I've
Well,
spoken
I
about
look at
this
all
with
the
other.
stats of our podcast all the time.
Well, that's true. That's true. I never do.
And yeah, I'm like, girl, I'm constantly refreshing that page.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. But you can't see what kind of traction other people are getting. So
Yes.
you're not comparing yourself
Right.
with them.
Yeah.
And I also like the fact that when I start, like a lot of the podcasts that I listen to, I have no idea how popular they are. Sometimes
Hmm.
you kind of get an idea because you go and follow them on Instagram or something, and if they have like,
Hmm.
200 followers, you get the sense that, okay, must not be a huge podcast, or you can
Hmm.
tell by the numbers of reviews they have on iTunes. But I never go check that.
Hmm.
And so I like that and another thing is that I like that I'm digesting information and making a judgment on it without knowing if like millions of other people are also listening to it and loving it, like
Hmm.
without knowing
Hmm.
how popular it is. Because
Right.
this is even something that I, have when I'm listening to music on Spotify. I always want to listen to the most popular song by the artist that I've just discovered, and it almost implicitly I feel like it impacts my appreciation for a song or how much patience I'm going to have for it. Like if I'm going to listen to it 10 different times to try and like it or not, or if I'm kind
Hmm.
of going to give up on it. Like if it has like 100 listens, it almost, yeah, it like devalues the song in my mind. Whereas if it has like millions of people who have listened to it, I'm like, oh, there must be something to this song, you know?
I'm like the opposite because I love like underground obscure music. So if there's a lot of people
Uh-huh.
liking it, I'm like, oh, it must be mainstream trash. So I'll like try and dig through
Yeah.
like the deep tracks to find something else. But
But
no,
like
I
shows even,
yeah,
like their
no,
level of
definitely.
popularity. And I
Definitely.
feel like videos too. Sometimes I'll click and I'll be like
Yeah.
5 million views. Like I need to
Yeah.
see this, you know?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, yeah, I think that's part of the problem. And we've talked about this before, and you've talked about this a lot on your channel about like the neoliberalization of life itself and how everything is a competition and everything is about getting the most views, getting the most likes, getting this and getting all that recognition. And even if you don't feel like you're competing with other YouTubers, like you kind of are, I guess, because everything is visible like that. So I feel like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I feel like there should be an option on YouTube. Like if everyone didn't know what
Oh, I would love that.
other people are getting viewed or whatever, um, yeah, I mean that would it
Yeah.
would really take it would take away your idea of like, oh, this is a competition. And then you could just put things out to just put them out and not really worry about your view count.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even for my videos, like my I did part one and part two of There's No Such Thing as a Natural Disaster, and part one got like 1 billion views and part two got like half the views, even though it was like I thought it was quite a good video.
It
But
was such a good
it's
video.
just such a hard, like, even though it's like, well, it's still got like a decent amount of views or whatever, but it's just hard when you have consistently a certain number of views and then it drops even a little bit, or even for whatever reason it's like, well, why is this one not getting any views? Like this, this was good. And like I said,
Yeah.
like my top viewed videos, which have like 15,000 or like, coming up on 20,000 views, are terrible. They're my worst videos. And I'm like, please stop
Mm-hmm.
watching these, guys. Like, watch these ones that I'm suggesting.
Yeah. And it's true that how many views you get on a certain video is really not it's really not reflective of the video itself and like the quality of the video. Like,
No.
I mean, some of my most viewed videos are videos that I'm proud of, but also the ones that I've been putting out lately are just have been getting like much less views. And also I want to point out that this is not about like the quantitative views themselves, because people might be listening to this podcast who like don't even get half those views or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But they definitely comparatively get less views than a lot of my videos did before. And it's really, yeah, it's like hard for me to just keep, it's almost like and a part of me really truly does not care, and I feel like neoliberal society takes that away from me.
Yeah.
Because people then I think, oh well, people must think that I should care.
Mm-hmm.
So, an example even is when people are like, oh, so do you make money with YouTube? Or like, oh yeah, I had someone ask me recently, like, oh, so is your French series like working well? Like it's a French expression, like doing well.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I mean, that's not like really why I'm doing it, but also people always ask me about my YouTube channel in terms of like, are the metrics growing, as if that should be the point of why I'm putting it out there. And so I tell people like, no, I mean, that's like not really what I'm trying to do with it. But then people are so obsessed with that sort of thinking that they think I must be sort of comforting myself by not caring about that so much. But I'm like, no, I'm really not. Like, I really don't care. But then I feel like I'm pushed to care sometimes.
Yeah. I know.
And like in college, I've always really hated competition, like being competitive with people. Like I don't know, I don't do any team sports. I think I used to be really competitive up until I was like, I don't know, 13 or 14 or even 15. I feel like I stopped being super competitive when I became a feminist, honestly, because before I was always trying to compete with other women or with other men to show them that like I was as good as other men.
Oh my God, me too. I was obsessed.
I went to college and I read like all this amazing feminist lit, and I was like, wait, I literally never want to compete with anyone ever again. Like I'm enough, and I feel like so
I was like the most confrontational in high school. I was just like, I can do anything a guy would do, and I would just like,
now I'm like, oh no, I'm cold, I don't want to do that sport, whereas like before I totally would have just like done it.
Oh yeah, no, for sure I would like compete to the death.
Right. I'm like, no, I don't really want to like ride this triple black diamond ski slope because I'm cold and I'd rather cuddle up and drink wine or something, whereas before I always felt like I had to prove myself. And I realized that actually I don't ever need to prove myself, and my life is just fine, and I'm not dead. And so in college, I really didn't take any, so I was a political science and gender studies major, and I really didn't take any courses with my close friends. I mean, they took other classes anyways, but I really liked being, like, I'm such a loner a lot of the times. Like, I really like taking classes on my own. I liked the fact that, like, I didn't really care about my GPA that much. Even I did for myself, like I worked hard, even though I also partied hard and socialized a lot, which I know people who know me from YouTube are always, side note, but whenever they meet me, they're like, oh, you're a lot more fun or a lot less serious than you seem on your YouTube channel, which I'm both like, yeah, dude, I'm cool. But then I'm also like, wow, I must really give off the vibe of being just, a really not fun, frigid person on YouTube.
Everything is oppression.
Yeah, exactly.
You're oppressing me with your presence.
Like, yeah, exactly. But anyway, that was an aside. But what was I saying? Oh yes, I was saying that in college, or just like in general, I really don't do things in teams, and I really didn't take classes with my friends. Not because I'm too competitive, but also just because I just did stress. I just don't like competition, and I kind of like doing my own thing and being passionate about my own stuff. And I sort of like when all my friends have different hobbies and we really support each other, but we're not like we're not like directly doing the same thing. And I really don't feel like I need numbers or I need to know how other people are doing to assess how I'm doing. Like, I feel very confident in my sense of self and my ability to do stuff. I just rather shut out the noise. So sometimes I feel like I pigeonhole myself on YouTube almost to like avoid or not pigeonhole. I don't know where I'm going with this, but I think on YouTube, like, I don't try to be super, like, I don't try to make a bunch of collabs, or I don't really try to hop on a lot of bandwagons, because it's kind of safe and nice to just be sort of in my own thing. but it's still interesting being on a platform where the numbers are so public, that you're sort of implicitly forced to compare yourself to people. And I also think that this whole like fear or avoidance of competition is also, I mean, that's why I don't like to share my channel with the people in my life. That's why I never post videos to my personal page. That's why, like, still on some level, even though YouTube is like this public thing, it's still something that a lot of people in my personal life don't get. So I'm not being compared with anyone, you know?
Yeah. No, definitely. I also don't, like, I don't touch any of the drama that's going on. I don't make takedown videos. I don't make things that I could make that would get a lot of views, but I'm like, no, I like to just put out my own little informational videos, and if you want to watch them, you can watch them, and if you don't, you can just not watch them. And I'm not going to get tied into any of this other shit. Like, I have so many people who come on and they're just like, debate, ask yourself, or like whatever, and I'm like, no. No. That would be like so pointless.
Why would you put yourself through that?
I have no idea.
And then people are all like, okay, unpopular opinion for a second here. I don't like debates, okay? People are all like, why aren't you more open to debate? Why aren't you? No. I can have a discussion with someone where we discuss our idea, but when the end in itself is to debate, to work on the art of how to win another argument, like, I'm not interested. I fucking hate that shit. I fucking hate debating. I hate when people, like, it's so absurd to just like, I understand why it can be an art form on its own. Like, people are assigned a point of view, and so they have to develop it in a way that is convincing, blah, blah, blah. But, like, that should be a very niche art form if people, like, if that's the shit they like to do on their free time. Otherwise, like, I'm not on there to debate people or to like try and trump their rhetoric with my argument. Like, I'm out there to put out ideas because I think that the ideas matter, and I don't want to debate you. I don't care. I can discuss things with you, but if things are framed as a debate that one person is going to win or lose, like, I'm not fucking interested.
No, absolutely not. I mean, in my classes, a lot of times we will do like mock debates or whatever as a way to learn some of the material, or, you know, if there's two major opposing ideas like Malthusianism and their critics or whatever, we'll do a debate to kind of, so that everybody can understand the material better.
Right.
But what you'd notice is that when you get into that debate situation, like, people don't get to choose what they're debating, like in these classes or in these tutorials or whatever, right? So you just assign, okay, you guys are debating this side, you guys are debating that side. And people get so into it. Like, they're so, you know, focused on debating their side and figuring out ways to trump the other person, and like, well, how can I think about this in another way that would make it, you know? And so it's, people get so riled up about it, but it's like, this might not even be your position, but since you're in this debate and you're made to kind of combat the other person with the idea that you've been assigned, then of course you're gonna just like go at them, you know what I mean? And you're not gonna sit there and be like, oh, actually that makes a lot of sense, like, I retract. And I guess everything I've ever thought in my life has been a complete sham, so I guess I should shut my channel down. Like, people don't do that, you know what I mean? So, like, there's no nuance at all. It just ends up being a screaming match. Like, all the debates that I can't even sit through a full debate. Like, I'll watch like little bits of it, but I can't, because I'm just like, it's pointless.
And it's, again, about hierarchy and having a winner and having a loser, you know, like, framing a discussion in that way makes me so annoyed. And I feel like that's a very male-centric way to handle things. How many men have come up to me or have, like, I've explained my ideas about, like, feminism or about veganism, and they're incredibly confrontational, and then they say, oh, I just like to play devil's advocate, or, like, to play devil's advocate, have you considered this? Or the very condescending reason sometimes is like, oh, well, I just want to make you work on how to better defend your ideas.
Yeah.
Oh my God. If anyone fucking tells me I just want to play devil's advocate, I'm like, no, goodbye. I cannot, like, are you kidding? I do not want to sit here and like, playing devil's advocate for what? Who is your audience? Who is watching you play devil's advocate? Like, who are you doing this for? It's just because your fragility is not handling learning something from me, you know? But, like, playing devil's advocate, like for what? For who? Just so that you can get me like super riled up and emotional and then try to discredit me on that basis and then say patronizingly that it was all to just help me work on the elaboration of my arguments in the first place?
Yeah, no, that's super annoying. But definitely, I mean, it goes back to what we were saying earlier about like valuing a male way of arguing and presenting information versus like a more female way of like open dialogue and like welcoming, kind, polite discussion. You know what I mean? And these debates, I mean, I feel like they don't really change anyone's mind. Like people go into them, you know, there's like debates like Sargon versus some leftist or whatever, and it's like all of Sargon's fans just think that he won and all of the leftist fans just think that the leftist won. It's just people don't come away from that feeling like they learned anything. They just feel like even more galvanized in their ideas. So I really do like discussion. That's why I like ContraPoints Live a lot. But she's not really, yeah, I mean, she does bring on people who disagree with her on some things as well, but it's such a much more productive discussion as opposed to these huge setup debates. And so, yeah, it's just ridiculous when I'll present something and people, their immediate reaction will be like, debate this person. I'm like, why would debate this person? Like,
and they make it, they're like, well, if you were really confident in what you were saying, or if like you just won't debate someone because you know you'd lose. It's like, no, it's because I have other shit to do in my life.
And also because I know that they wouldn't be arguing in good faith. And also because if somebody just doesn't have any of the relevant information, then it's like, I don't have time to sit there explaining it to them. For example, like listening to that debate between Matt Blender and the vegan cheetah, and the vegan cheetah is going off about how, you know, well, isn't it just the elite Jews, or like, isn't it like, aren't people in Africa just backwards, and like, aren't they just not good at being capitalists? And it's just like, if you don't have any of the knowledge or background or information, I'm not going to spend hours sitting here being like, well, okay, let's start with the history of colonialism, you know, like like that's fucking pointless.
Like there's so many layers of stuff you'd have to deconstruct before you were even able to understand it's what I'm arguing.
Yeah. It's too much.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't have a debate like that, because then everything that the other person is saying is just this ridiculous thing where it's like, okay, that's so problematic, so let me just explain the way that the entire world works to you in 5 minutes, you know? It's just absurd. So, yeah. And
it's also really difficult because a lot of those times those people have these axioms that we've been fed our entire life, like okay, give me one. I'm blanking.
Taxation is theft.
Taxation is theft, for example. And just because that view is the dominant view and has been repeated by people so many different times, and just because like it has all of this weight in a debate that it should not have, because the thing itself is a horrible point, but just by virtue of the fact it's been repeated over and over again, it gives the person who says it so much clout. I have this a lot when I'm debating with my father. Dad, okay, he's not listening to this. I need to stop freaking out. But he says these axioms like, you know, competition is what made us who we are, or you need to, this like social Darwinist idea of like, even though it's not all roses and rainbows and it sucks, like at the end of the day, we need to be competitive, and like competition is what got us here, and it's what, you know, at the end of the day, like getting things on the market is what's going to make them succeed, and whatever, all these pretty absurd, verifiably false claims that he doesn't need to back up at all, or he doesn't need to question at all, just because they're so universally accepted. And it's really difficult to argue with that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, and that's the thing, like, why would I want to get in a debate with somebody who's just going to be like, socialists want equality of outcome, not equality of opportunity and all this crap? It's like, no. You know, it's like, it's tiresome. Like, I don't have time for this, you know?
Yeah, 100%. I also feel like social media and YouTube and just like online spaces can be hard places on which to interact if you don't go in with this incentive to win a debate, or to almost detach yourself from what's happening in order to get this outcome of winning or losing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that like made sense, but I just think that people online definitely treat themselves less kindly than they would in person, just because they don't have to see the pain that they inflict on the other person.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also very true like in the leftist circle, you know, or in just sometimes I see people really going off on each other
Mm-hmm.
in ways that like just give me just a lot of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, even though I really understand, and I don't want this to come off as I condone tone policing, because I don't, but just some of the really aggressive things that people say online, I don't think that they would actually ever say in person. And that is also, I don't know, that's just also hard for me to interact with. And I feel like just in general, in even my daily life, I'm pretty sensitive. I really, every time I do something or say something or even text something, I'm always very aware that someone is on the receiving end of that, and all the different ways that they could be perceiving my interaction with them. And I think that's just a projection because I really overly analyze the way that people interact with me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of deviating from the whole social media issue right now. I'm known to be, for example, a really friendly texter because I just never want people to feel worried that I might be mad at them, you know, or, you know, I'll send a lot of like exclamation points and like smiley faces and hearts. And it's not because I'm like, you know, trying to be a people pleaser or something, because I'm not. But when it comes to, I don't know, meeting up with someone or I don't know, answering someone's question, I always do it in a very friendly way, because if someone like texts me and says like ... or like puts periods everywhere or something, I'll usually read into that too much.
Yes.
And I think that like the internet is such a hard place for that, because there's so much that isn't left to the face-to-face or voice-to-voice.
Mm-hmm.
And for people like me, it's just really fucking stressful.
Mm-hmm. All of my texts are littered with LOLs all the way through, because
Me too.
I just want to like emphasize that this is a very jovial text.
Like the people will be like, "What time is class at?" And I'll be like, "Class is at 5." Like exclamation point, smiley
LOL.
face, kissy face, heart. It's like, but I don't want to say like class is at 5, period, because I'm like, no, I want this person to know that if they or you know, I want this person to, if they need to ask me like, well, what room is it in, or what professor is going to be there, like I want them to feel like they're not annoying me by doing that, you know. So like
no, I know, even with my students sometimes I'll put like a smiley face or something.
Oh my God, yeah. My students, oh, this is something else that I've noticed, and I think it's something that women do more than men. It's really interesting because I'm a private tutor, and also I teach group classes for high schoolers, and all the girls are like, you should see my texts with the girls, with the young women that I tutor. They have hearts, they have hugs. They're like, okay, see you at 5, like heart, hug, smile, kiss, like. It's really funny, and they're also just like so much more careful around me, and like very friendly, and always ask me if I like want something to drink, or if I'm cold, or how I'm doing. And you know, I love my little dude students too. Like they're awesome. Like whenever I see high schoolers where just the young men are like really respectful, and oh man, it just like touches my heart.
Me
I'm like,
too.
you're gonna grow up to be like such a fucking dope human.
I know.
So I have a ton of love for my students of all genders, but I definitely notice a difference with how self-conscious, or how, you know, how the women act, like always kind of considering how their reaction is going to be taken into account by the other party. And in my life, I do try to deprogram myself from that sometimes, or to a certain extent. I tell myself, okay, Maureen, analyze the situation through your perspective, not through how it's impacting the person that is receiving your message, and so in turn influencing how you are learning to analyze your own behavior, if that made sense. I just try as much as possible to like unidirectionally act, you know, of like, well, this is my action and this is the impact that I want, and I'm just seeing that line going in one direction. And I trust myself. I'm a like considerate, compassionate person, so like I'm not gonna act like an asshole because of that, you know.
Mhm.
Um,
But I
but
don't know.
like
I mean,
trust
like, I
myself
really
enough to,
appreciate when people take time to think not unidirectionally. You know what I mean? I'm having someone that I recently met and I've been texting. Um, they do not do like jovial texts.
yeah,
It's
I
very,
can't deal with cold
it's very
texters,
to the
man.
point all the time with periods everywhere, and there's like hardly any an emoji. And I'm like, I don't know how to read this at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard to not put yourself in that person's shoes because you're like, if I was
Yeah.
texting like that, it would mean that I hate
Yeah, I'm like,
you. You know what I
whoa,
mean?
this is yeah, snubbed.
That's been one
Yeah.
of the biggest battles of my adult life is learning to separate myself from people's reactions, understanding that even though they're not writing me back or even though they're answering in some kind of way, it doesn't mean that they don't love me, or it doesn't mean that they must be mad, or it doesn't mean that they must not care about me. It just means that they have a different operating system than I do, because it's hard for me not to think, well, if I was acting exactly like that, it would mean this, this, and this. It would
Mm-hmm.
mean that this person is, you know, out of my thoughts. It would mean that
Mm-hmm.
I'm sort of mad. It would mean that, you know, all of these things
Mm-hmm.
that I really have to struggle not to view other people's actions through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and some people are just flat out inconsiderate, like for sure. But some people also just obviously like act differently than I do, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to not get all worried.
No.
And plus, if they have a problem with me, they just should tell me. Like I shouldn't be playing mind games to try and figure it out. Just like this
No.
person that you're seeing, like if they don't want to be seeing you, or if they like they're gonna tell you that.
Yeah, well,
You know
hopefully.
what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So,
Yeah, I mean, and you just have to like find your people too, right? Because it's like, okay, yeah,
mhm.
somebody has a different operating system than you and they're throwing you into disarray. But it's like, yeah, no, you just got to find your people who get what you're putting out and maybe put out a similar energy, a similar
Mhm.
vibe, and then go from there.
Yeah. Yeah, and how can we find these people, Maxi?
That was a perfect segue.
Yeah.
Well, tell me, Maureen. I'm dying to know.
Um, yeah, I was joking to Maxi about this a few days ago because I felt like when I became vegan, I didn't know any other vegans like at all. This was, oh my God, almost 5 years ago now. Damn. And also when I became a feminist, I felt like I didn't know any other feminists. And when I realized I was bisexual, I was like, I don't know any other bisexuals. And it's so funny how every time, flash forward a few months into the future, like those are the only people who I know around me. Like I feel like all my friends are vegan or vegan curious, or yeah, like all my closest friends are vegan at this point. And it's either because I've met friends that are also vegan or because I've veganized like my best friends.
Hmm.
Um, and same, like the same thing is happening with bi women. Like I know so many bi women now, and you know, either a lot of women in my life have also realized that they're bi, either I've also like sought out, you know, sought to meet more bi people, so I've like created a little bit of a community. But that's really awesome. Like finding, as you said, like finding your people and seeing
Hmm.
that there are people who are out there. And if I live my values fully, then, you know, I don't want to get all law of attraction here, but like you do
Yeah, you do.
attract, or like you do, like the people
Hmm.
who are also interested in that stuff gravitate towards you and you gravitate towards them,
Hmm.
especially
That's how I
because
found
I'm
you.
like, totally, yeah. Like I'm such a no bullshit type of person. Ah, man, I really envy like people who can small talk at parties, or people who
Ugh.
can, I just get so fucking real right away. And my friends tease me about this sometimes. Like within 30 minutes, the person is telling me like their life story and their childhood and like all the drama that's happened to them. And like I just get into such serious conversations with people all the time.
Yeah.
And on some level, can be tiring sometimes, as we know. But also, I'm just so fucking grateful for the deep, deep, deep connections that I have with the people who are close to me in my life. And I I feel like the upside from being like an intense person with like politically charged beliefs about everything, obviously there are downsides that we've been talking about for nearly an hour and a half. But I also feel like I know who I am, and like I love the people who are around me so much, and like the few people who I am surrounded by love me for me,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
that's really awesome to have that sort of security.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're really, really good at, surrounding yourself with amazing people. I feel like, I mean, a lot of my friends that I have, like my closest friends, I've had since like grade school. And so, I mean, a lot of them obviously they understand me. Like we understand each other on like a lot of different levels, but a lot of them are like we don't talk politics or we don't really talk like
Mm,
sometimes we talk about veganism and stuff. But it's just yeah, it's just kind of different. I guess a lot of the people that I've met since like putting myself out there, I mean, like my colleagues at school obviously like share a lot of my politics or
mm-hmm.
whatever. Um, but yeah, I guess I meet people online, but I haven't like been as successful, I guess, at like creating like a vegan like leftist community like
Mm-hmm.
off of an online space. Although I'm trying to go out to like more events and stuff in Toronto, and I feel like that'll be, really good and really useful. Um, because yeah, I get a lot of comments from people or a lot of questions from people who like live in small towns and like small conservative towns, and they feel super alienated and they don't really know how to connect with people or build that community. And I'm always kind of at a loss because I mean it is hard, it
Mm-hmm.
is hard to, especially if you're in a situation where you don't have a lot of people close to you. But then in that case, I think online is you know, a good medium because I'm like, yeah, I've never even met Marine in real life. Like, guys,
Guys, make it happen. Send us
hey,
money.
we're going to in June. June is for
Oh
sure.
man,
Um,
so excited.
but still, we've been able to like have such a amazing close relationship just via online, and we met that way. So I feel like even if you live in a tiny place and people around you aren't that great, I feel like you can still make connections with people that feel good and make you realize that you're not alone.
Totally.
Hmm.
Totally. I think that there's such a tremendous sense of community and empowerment that can be accomplished by just putting yourself out there as exactly who you are and meeting people with like that fresh slate. And I think
Hmm.
that if online can be a place where you can do that, I think that's really wonderful. I know that when I first went vegan and stopped caring about or just became I would not call myself a minimalist, but really didn't like got rid of so many of my clothes, just really developed like different interests. I felt quite alienated from my group of close friends, not my close of group friends. Um, and I signed up on OkCupid, and my profile, it was the first time that I was like defining myself in these like really political terms, in what I was doing. And so I was meeting people from online. We were meeting on the basis they knew that I was like anti-capitalist. They knew that I was vegan. They knew that I was a feminist.
Hmm.
And just it was a huge out for me at that time when I felt very alienated from my close friends to be able to just meet someone with these labels or like with this new identity that I had. Even if I didn't particularly get along with that person, it
Hmm.
didn't really matter. But
Hmm.
the fact that I was presenting myself to the world in this way and like getting to experiment those new identities and talk about these new ideas and like reclaim them in a public space was so important.
Hmm.
And yeah, so like online was a huge part of that for me. OkCupid was a huge part of that for me. I've never no, I've dated one person from OkCupid, but otherwise I've met a lot of people on OkCupid, and I've never had anything romantic with any of them except for yeah, one person. But just I say that because I really think that it can be a website or like online can be a place where you can go without, necessarily like dating the person or having something romantic.
Hmm.
But so at that time also I had just graduated college. I feel like I've talked about that time period quite a few times on online platforms because it really was a difficult time for me in terms of like yeah, finding veganism, and understanding like colonialism better. Just, I don't know, I was like so fucking enraged, but also very enraged about all these things, but so incredibly passionate about all of these, like, just all these blindfolds that were getting ripped away from my
Mm-hmm.
eyes. That sounded painful. You know what I mean? So I was really lucky because after college I traveled for 6 months in Asia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, now looking back on some of the aspects of the trip, I kind of roll my eyes, because it was, yeah, there's a lot to say about like the white privilege that I had and the financial privilege that I have in being able to do this. And I would not advocate this as like a global solution,
Yeah.
that's applicable to anyone. But for me, like traveling alone and I don't know, just getting to really be 100% who I was and meet so many different people was so important. And it really also made me realize that people come in and out of your life, but you never leave your side,
Mm-hmm.
and like you always need to live by what makes you proud and what you believe in at the time. Because if you start to compromise yourself and your beliefs and your interests based on who's around you, like that's a fucking nightmare,
Mm-hmm.
Like those things are all temporal. At the end of the day, you're gonna live alone, you're gonna die alone. You need to be who you are and
Mm-hmm.
not let that person constantly get deviated by the circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And traveling for 6 months alone really helped solidify that for me, because there were so many times where I would have wanted to make little compromises to feel more comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
to make the other person feel more comfortable, but then you like leave that person the next day or like 2 days later when you're not in that bus ride or whatever, and you realize, oh, that person actually, that had no bearing on my life. Like what did have bearing on my life was what I decided to do, because that influences the person who I am today and the decisions that I have to live by today.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just like realizing and really trying to embrace the fact that what's most important is like to live by who you want to be and to try to own that 100%. And yeah, to like learn to love to spend time with yourself and love who you are, because like
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna be, I know it sounds lame, but I'm really fucking excited and almost comforted by the fact that no matter what happens in my life, like I'm gonna be with myself. Like I
Mm-hmm.
actually love to hang out with me. Like
Oh
whenever
my
I
God, me
hang out with
too.
people for too long, for like a week or even like a day,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes whenever I have alone time again, I'm so excited. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
just like, wow, this is so fucking great. I feel like taking myself out on little dates or like making a
Yeah.
nice meal and reading a good book or watching a good show. Like I'm just like, fuck, Maureen, you're so lucky that you get to just like hang out with yourself at the end of the
Oh
day.
my God. Yeah, same. I totally love just being alone with myself.
How fucking lucky are we that that's the case?
Hmm. But I mean, it could be the case for everyone. It's just that people like
Yes.
we're not really taught how to enjoy our own company, really, or like just be
Mm-hmm.
happy about ourselves and be happy about our convictions, even if no one else believes them, or people are challenging them or making you feel shit about them. Like I would not want to trade what I know just to be like, ignorance is bliss. Like no, I would not want to trade what I know to be maybe more superficially happy
Mm-hmm.
within the system.
Mm-hmm.
I would much rather have
Well,
my convictions and my and know what's really going on and be awake to this stuff, even if it's depressing and even if it makes you feel alienated sometimes.
and everything about society is designed so that you're constantly, not only are we not taught to enjoy our own company, but we live in a world that tells us that doesn't even really matter, because what matters is how you're doing compared to how everyone else is doing.
Mm-hmm. Right. And if everyone else is,
Getting
married with
ahead.
kids and having a
Yeah.
house and, a white picket fence, and what are you doing? Slogging around,
Mm-hmm.
doing 5 jobs, living in a tiny
Mm-hmm.
apartment alone, doing puzzles at night.
Maxie, are you talking about someone we know?
Yeah. But no, I wouldn't like trade it for the world. I mean, I would, I guess, but
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. I mean, the world is a pretty
yeah,
good
no,
thing to
like,
trade it
I mean, it's
for.
like not that great, but it's like, it is wonderful. So.
Yeah.
Mm.
Also, a good way to meet people, or at least to hear people that are talking about your same things and conviction, is if you can go out to conferences,
Mhm.
or to like book readings, or to any sort of space where someone is talking about these ideas, to like that can be really therapeutic, in helping you realize you're like not alone,
Mhm.
and also making sure that you're reading things that are inspiring you to keep growing. I was telling Mexi, whenever I start to pay too much attention to what people with different interests, or who are really just not living the same trajectory as I am, are doing, it it starts to make me feel like sad, or deviates me a little bit from like being confident in what I'm doing.
Mhm.
So for example, when I start, and I don't know how I feel about this. Like, I'm not saying that it shouldn't make, like, it isn't productive in a way, but whenever I look at what like really main like what's going on, for example, in the mainstream community, and I see these people with like millions and millions of followers, I'm over here like, I guess, advocating for a very different image of veganism than they are. If I start paying too much attention to like what's going on in that camp, it makes me question like the importance of like what I actually knew to be true, or what I was passionate about that very same morning or
Mhm.
something.
Mhm.
I think it's important to redirect that energy in perhaps reading like a book by Angela Davis or something that is going to teach you a lot of stuff, but that's going to also bolster the conviction that what you're doing is meaningful and is correct, or is
Mhm.
like, I guess I'm trying to make the distinction between like consuming media that inspires you and that like uplifts you,
Mhm.
versus consuming media that is just trying to do something different than what you're trying to do. Like, there's some friends that I like start comparing myself to or something, and I'm like, wait, why am I even doing that? They're just doing something completely different than I am.
Mhm.
And like, that's okay and that's fine, but like, that's clearly not what you're doing. And why are you applying this very selective part of their life and comparing it to yours, when the rest of the big picture is completely different, and
Mhm.
there's so much of their life that you don't relate to and you wouldn't want. So it's not productive to take a little tiny piece and compare it with a very tiny piece of your life and
Mhm.
allow that to get you down.
Yeah, like I really only consume a very minimal number of like YouTubers or podcasts or whatever. Like I really only consume stuff that really inspires me. And like I used to consume stuff from like all the huge names in the vegan movement, and slowly I just lost interest. And it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily because I was like, oh, their vision is making me depressed, but it's just I was like, this is boring. Like I'm not
Mm-hmm.
getting much from this, you know what I mean? And then
Mm-hmm.
so I haven't really looked back at a lot of like what anyone is doing. And then when I do, like when I catch wind of it, like when I catch wind of whatever vegan washing Israel stuff that you talked about
Yeah.
in the last podcast, I'm
Which,
just
by the way, we're recording this before that podcast goes
yeah,
live.
we're recording this early because I'm going on a trip for the next 2 weeks, so that'll be cool.
Yes.
But yeah, but
So I feel like when this episode will come out, we'll probably have caught a lot of angry reactions from that podcast. So just so you know, we're not responding to it in this episode. Perhaps we will in the
hmm
next one.
yeah. But yeah, anyway, so I just don't consume any of that. So whenever I hear some like major drama or whatever, I'm always just so shocked and like, I mean, I shouldn't be shocked or disappointed because I'm like, well, obviously this is just like the mainstream kind of like froofy like
Yeah.
stuff that's out there.
Froofy is another one. Another
Yeah,
word
froofy stuff.
that must not have been part of your vocabulary before.
No, just stuff that doesn't have much substance. So it's like, well, why would I really be surprised that they're doing things that are so problematic politically? Um, but yeah, I just flat out don't consume it because yeah, it's not inspiring and it is kind of like
No,
just like not depressing, but it's just kind of
it is depressing,
I mean, it is
honestly.
just a little bit sad or just it's just like kind of vapid, you
Because
know?
you're like, wow, so many people are consuming this stuff.
Right. Like so many people want this vapid nothingness with zero analysis of what's going on.
No. Yeah. And also, I think that so many people are just, yeah, so politically alienated. And so, like, it always comes back to also just me being mad that people are in situations where capitalism has made them interested in this stuff by
Mm-hmm.
stripping out so much of the other substance in their life.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah.
But, we're making headway. We're building
Yeah,
communities.
vegan vanguards coming to the rescue.
Yeah. We're making headway on our channels, man. We're slowly chipping away at this behemoth
What's a behemoth?
of the like mainstream crap.
What's a behemoth?
It's like a big giant monster.
Really? Oh, I've never heard that before. I like it.
So yeah, I think we're gonna wind it down there, I guess. Thanks everyone for listening to a good long rant that we needed to get off of our chests. And hopefully
Yeah,
it
I
was
feel a lot better.
yeah, and hopefully it was productive for you as well as being parts of these online movements. So yeah.
Wow, I just went onto our Patreon, and can I just say that your logo skills are blowing me away.
Thank you so much. Yes, we have a new logo. I can't believe we didn't mention that.
Woo!
New logo.
Yeah.
Finally, we couldn't stand the last logo either, just like our intro.
Just like our entire branding is
Yeah. So we've
needs work,
stepped it
but
up. And we have a number of new pledges to shout out today. So thank you so much to Darth Vapor, Sonia, Casey Balmer. So thank you so much to everyone. Sorry if I mispronounced people's names, and I did not attempt to pronounce Sonia's last name because I didn't want to butcher it. But thank you to everyone for your amazing support. We actually now have the money to get Maureen's new mic.
Yay!
Yay!
So excited.
So if you'd like to support the show, please sign up to be a monthly patron, or you can make a one-time donation via PayPal, and both of these you can find on our website, which is veganvanguardpodcast.com, or you can rate and review us on iTunes or Google Play or whatever else you listen to us on, and share the episodes with your friends.
Yeah.
Help us grow this community.
Yay!
Yay!
Thank you so much.
Yes. All right. So we'll see you in 2 weeks.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.